most anyone's going to be absolutely shocked that I'll even share this, because this is beyond trauma. But I want people to understand I experienced almost unlimited trauma, but it didn't conquer me or destroy me. That's kind of the message of hope I want. So if you've got that on your side, you can be a powerful individual. And if you don't, you might just be a victim. So during my abused childhood phase, I had all manner of strange experiences, but they all seemed close to being negative. These like shadow beings, and they looked like Egyptian god figures, but they're kind of shadow beings, but they were faintly glowing. They weren't love and light, because I didn't experience love and light, because there was no love and light in my life. You see, your life can drag down your inner truth. I mean, if you're being tortured, I mean, maybe that Jesus guy could have been overflowing with love while being tortured, but I wasn't 100% up to the task. Sorry. So I knew that I was transcendent awareness from beyond space and time. I knew it always. So no matter how hard the world was, I was still me. Nothing could destroy me. I could be killed and I would just laugh.
Hello and welcome back to Fire in the Cosmos. It's been a while since our last episode, so thank you for sticking around. Sinead and I have done a lot of traveling. We went to the Soul Foundation Symposium in Italy, went to Switzerland for a bit after that. And we've just been in and out of things. We had the UFO hearing back in September, and we are treated today with a special guest who we've been trying to record with for quite some time. We had a lot of technical issues come up, some scheduling issues, but finally made it happen, and we are so excited to have with us today Kevin Cann. This will be part one of a two-part episode. Please hit those subscribe and like buttons on YouTube. We're still a pretty new show and need your help working that algorithm to help us get in front of a wider audience. And turn on alerts or notifications to keep up with our current releases. If you're listening on other platforms, your ratings go a long way to helping us expand our reach there as well. We also love receiving your comments and questions on these platforms or on our socials, so please send those our way. If you'd like to support us financially and join the community that we're developing, please check us out on Patreon, where we have just launched some new Galaxy and Universe supporter tiers with some amazing exclusive content and offerings. We also have a free Patreon tier there. These will be posted in the link in the description below, as well as the link to part 2 of this episode once it airs. And just a disclaimer to the audience, in this interview we did with Kevin, he gets into some deeply, deeply traumatic portions of his childhood that include abuse, self-harm, and just some horrible incidents that he has lived through, fought through, and come out amazingly on the other side of. So if you're at all sensitive to these, then please maybe consider skipping this episode, but just know that there is a positive, deeply positive message in all of this that comes through. Thank you. Kevin is the founder of Platonic Surrealism.com, a framework which integrates insights from philosophy, neuroscience, and lived experience into a practical system for wholeness and transcendence without toxic cultural baggage. He teaches that awareness and potentiality are the primal conditions of existence and offers tools for living with clarity, composure, and creative agency. Kevin is the author of Platonic Surrealism, a modern framework for meaning beyond science and religion, underpinnings of personal transcendence, and we'll post a link to that in the description. Kevin is the co-author of the 3rd chapter of Jeff Kripal's book, How to Think Impossibly, about souls, UFOs, time, belief, and everything else. The chapter is titled That They Are Not Human, Thinking on the Autistic Spectrum. He is also a retired nuclear engineer for the U.S. Navy and retired from the University of California as a systems engineer with more than 30 years of experience. Thank you so much for joining us, Kevin.
It's my deep pleasure. It really is. It's young people like you that make me just smile and have warm thoughts about the future.
Thank you so much. I've been wanting to speak to you ever since I first heard about you. Last summer, I was at the Party Center in Italy with a group where Jeff Kripal was speaking for 3 days with us in a pretty cool, intimate environment in Tuscany. And it was a bunch of consciousness-minded folks, many of whom had no idea about the UFO topic or its connection with consciousness. So it was really cool to be there. And Jeff graced us with your presence on Zoom, where we set up a big projector screen and you zoomed in and spoke with us. And it was really fascinating to hear a bit of your story there. So I'm excited.
Yeah,
those are great people, and Ed Perry, they're great people.
Yeah.
And Alex, the director over there, Alex
Gomez. Yep.
Gomez, an awesome guy.
Yes, he is. Yeah. So where do we start? So let's start with what you were just doing. You were just at Esalen, right? And you were co-hosting an event there. Do you mind sharing a bit about that?
So back about 6 months ago, Jeff Kripal, other than my wife, my best friend, other than my wife, he's my best friend. And we've been working together for years now since we first did the book, How to Think It Possibly. And, Jeff is, he was like the CEO, president, whatever, of Esalen for a while. So he's big stuff over there, and, quite justifiably so. And he's also the president head of the Center for Research, whatever the title is, CTR, I believe it is. And he passed on a message to me suddenly out of the blue, and he said, "Hey, Kevin, Esalen's asked me to pass on a question to you. Do you want to teach a class about summoning UFOs and about souls?" And I said, "Why, sure. How can I pass that up?" And so, I already knew all the material I wanted to go over, pretty much. But I spent like 6 months rapidly preparing for that class to make sure that I wanted to give the maximum amount of information transfer that might be helpful to people in a relatively short period of time, because I shared the class with Jeff. He presented material from his new upcoming trilogy of books, The Physics of Mystics. So half the instructional time was his and half the instructional time was mine. And then we also wanted to insert a little bit of Josh Kutchin.
Love Josh.
The one and only Josh Kutchin, just absolutely freaking amazing. One of maybe my second or third best friend in the entire world. Yeah. And I requested of Esalen.
We have interviewed him on Fire in the Cosmos, and it was one of our favorites by far. And I just heard from him today. It was one of his as well. He's amazing.
Yeah, he's great.
Boy, yeah.
He is utterly amazing. And he was one of the few people that actually was an inspiration to me for Platonic Surrealism, believe it or not. I have a philosophy of not letting anyone inspire me. I know that sounds weird, but I don't want to pass on someone else's second, third, fourth, 10th hand thinking. I want to go straight to the source directly myself. And that's what I've done my whole life. But anyway, let's get back to Esalen. So he spoke a little bit, and it was really great. He was so incredibly generous and awesome. He flew from his home on the East Coast out to San Francisco, and he drove me to Esalen like he was driving Miss Daisy. It was a 3-hour road trip each way. So we got a lot of time together, and that was just utterly wonderful. And I had one other instructional assistant, Jonathan Sapp. It was his birthday on December 5th. And the class was December 5th through 7th. And he's a friend of Jeff's, a common friend. So I was allowed to have a second instructional assistant. So I got in. And come on, we know how it works. You call someone an instructional assistant because they're your friend, and you want to let them get in for free at Esalen. That's how that works. Everybody knows it. Come on now.
It's not cheap. It's not cheap.
Well, you can get a scholarship. There's some people that got in for almost nothing. So anyway, so that was the class from the perspective of Platonic Surrealism, which is my framework that I use to make sense of everything, make sense of my entire life. My first paranormal experience was in the womb. because I was aware there. That's how far back this goes for me. But I had a lot of negative experiences, so I needed to make sense of it. Why is this negative stuff happening? Is reality just awful? I mean, that's a very valid question. So, yeah, I developed, as I put it, I remembered Platonic Surrealism because it seems like it's out there in the universe even before I was born. I just wrote it down. I was like a steno clerk. It was, I'm not saying it was channeled. I don't do that sort of thing. But it just kind of dropped out of the sky. No words or anything. I just felt it. I just knew it. And I just wrote it down. So at Esalen, I taught the basics of Platonic Surrealism. And it was an incredible experience, right? Utterly incredible experience. I made some really close friends there. The time went way too fast. I think I need like a solid week at Esalen to get it out properly. Not just like 3 hours. I had like 3 hours time allotted to me over the weekend. That just wasn't enough.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not going to cover everything in our little 2-hour interview here.
Yeah.
So, but fortunately, I did squeeze in a ritual I call the opening of the ways. It's what I call Theurgy procedure, meaning that you're not going out and just calling random wrong numbers and seeing what shows up. That's what they do in the UFO community, the CE5 contact. Come on now, they don't know what they're doing. Come on now, they get all sorts of wrong calls. Every call is a wrong call. They go, oh, please, universe, send me a UFO. Well, there's a lot of people listening, a lot of things listening. And so I won't do that. I will not do that. So the difference between summoning a UFO, which of course we're going to have to talk about after Esalen, because I did that too in 2013. That's kind of what started a lot of this. The difference between summoning and Metatheurgy is with Metatheurgy, you lower the barriers that separate you and your truest self. And then you shine very brightly, and that attracts the attention of the highest forms of other people and other consciousness, autonomous collectives, otherwise known as souls of UFOs. You see, instead of dredging around the bottom of the sludge pit, like a lot of astral projection type practices do, head to the very top. Head to the very top where you dive into the heart of love. Dive into your own inner essence, which knows what it's doing because it already lives there. Don't be a sleazebag and call for some lower astral entity, some jerk from the 11th dimension that just wants to dive in and get some notoriety that he played with a human. Don't do that. So
those jerks from the 11th dimension.
I know, aren't they just the worst? So I did a Metatheurgy practice, opening of the ways, and some of the participants said that they felt me expanding out like a bubble that wrapped them all up inside of me. Yeah, not all. Some people, the spiritually aware people, felt that. And it did summon a UFO, I'm told, but I never saw it myself, so I can't guarantee it actually summoned a UFO. Okay. You see, I'll tell you a little secret about Esalen here. I gotta be very careful. Tell you a little secret.
There's a lot of secrets, right?
Well, it's an awesome place. I mean, come on, they helped bring down the Berlin Wall back in the day. These people are amazing, given gifts. You know that, right? If you read the book on Esalen.
I was not aware of that story.
Yeah, read the Esalen book by Jeff Kripal. They helped bring down the Berlin Wall, for God's sake. These people are amazing. So it's a kind of a public secret that if anything unusual or spiritual happens, it always appears at the hot spring baths.
Yes, yeah.
And that's where it'll appear. And that's where one person in my class was at the hot tubs, up against the ocean in the hot springs area. I've never been over there. And she said she just looked up and there it was, a black triangular UFO. But I've only got her word And I talked to her about it. She's obviously not lying to me. I mean, she didn't. Why would she lie? But that's what they call an anecdotal experience, right? So she saw it and no one else did. But the secret of Esalen in terms of that is that, well, I mean, honestly, I read this on the internet, but I can't say I verified it from Esalen because I won't say that. But the previous folks who were at Esalen for UFOs, they had something appear in the same spot.
Yeah, we've heard that from, Ross Coulthard talked about that a bit.
He did.
And our friend Jordan has also talked about that. So, yeah, we're aware of that. I think I've even heard Jack Serfati talk about some hot tub diplomacy that took place at Esalen. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Right. So, yeah, it appeared in the same spot. So, actually, I talked to what appeared and got a little information about why it appears there, and now I must keep that to myself.
Okay.
But nothing ominous, you know.
I mean,
let's just say that the Esalen Indians were there before we were,
mm-hmm.
and I'll just leave it at that. But that does tie in very closely to the soul as a UFO concept. Because as I taught in the class, souls and UFOs and other highfalutin topics like that are really hyper objects and hyper beings. I go over that quite a bit in my book, and I did it in the class. I always forget the two. There was a philosopher and another scholar that talk about it, like James Madden.
James Madden. Yeah.
Yeah, he talks about that sort of topic too. So I want to always give credit where credit's due. I only heard about it after I'd already invented it personally, but I like confirmation, right? So confirmation is great. So think about it like archetypes, right? That an archetype can span multiple countries, potentially multiple worlds, right?
Mm-hmm.
An archetype, like the conquering hero might be an archetype, or wise mother or wise man. Well, those archetypes, according to Jung, they are proposed to be kind of engraved in nature itself and not just something that humans have. So these archetypes, per the hyper object line of thought, they cross multiple times and multiple worlds, multiple realities. So when you see a UFO, it could be a part of your grandma's soul, because they're all part of the same majestic object or being. So people struggle with that a little bit, but really it explains everything about Jacques Vallée's approach to UFOs, say. That's why you can have a physical UFO that's also your dead grandmother, because they're part of the same hierarchical archetypal tree of being, like a giant octopus where the head is like outside of space and time, putting tentacles into the physical world to learn and grow. So that would be a great physical representation of a hyper being. So one tentacle may be like all rubbery, right? Like the story of the elephant and, the blind man, whatever. Oh, I feel a trunk. Oh, I feel a foot. I feel a tusk. Well, this explains it. Why does everyone see something different? Because they are seeing something different. But it's all part of the same hyperobject. You see, this stuff is not even hard. But people, if they have hard hearts and don't want to try to expand their mind a little bit, they'll just cling to easy explanations that don't have necessarily any connection to the truth at all.
Kevin, let me ask you something at this point, if you don't mind. You're making me think of two things. You're making me think of this illustration I saw today of this gigantic being who's under a kind of surface. Like there's just a, imagine a rectangular drawing. Okay, rectangular image. It's a hand-drawn image. And 2/3 of this image, there's a slanting line going across the top part of the image, and underneath it is this being, this enormous being. And through the slanting line, the being is poking just its fingertips and its thumb.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
It's been circulating for a while. And so people on the other side of the diagonal line, of course, only see the fingertips and think that each one is a separate thing, when really
You got it.
Okay.
You
thank
got it. You got it, sister.
Okay, that's confirming. That's very confirming. You're also making me think about the egg. Do you know the video, The Egg, that's on the internet?
Oh, I'm really tired of egg videos myself.
You're tired of egg videos.
Yeah, and orb and not orb, that kind of bowling ball video. Oh, I'm so tired of that. Oh my god.
This is completely different. This is completely different.
Philosophical egg.
It's very philosophical. It's the only egg you'll ever need, in my personal opinion. It's about how each one of us is this idea that each one of us is essentially not God exactly, but like the entire universe. Every single thing, every other person, every tree, every spoon is there entirely for me, just for me. So this entire universe exists for me to learn and grow. And then once I learn and grow and this body dies, I want to ask you what you think of this. And you go back up into the ethers and you meet whatever you think the that one intelligence is, the one hyper being maybe. You interact with it and it tells you the truth. It says, well, actually, all of this was really just there for you to learn and grow. So what are you going to do next? What do you think of that?
I don't think I know. I mean,
Okay.
come on. I died and I stayed dead for a while. I got a good look at everything and then I came back. And I still see the things that I saw when I was dead while I'm alive. Not quite as clearly. I mean, there was a bailing effect. I mean, come on now. I'm not Superman or nothing. No, it's actually very simple. In Platonic Surrealism, it constantly talks about awareness and potentiality. Let's get some basics in here, and I may go back to Esalen a little bit, but that's mostly what I wanted to say about Esalen.
I do. Once you finish this point, I want to get back to ask you about your opening up technique. Just a few questions about that.
Okay. We need this foundation of Platonic Surrealism. So, Platonic Surrealism talks about awareness and potentiality. It talks about primordial consciousness and fractured consciousness. Those are the main levels that we talk about. Now, here's the thing, and this is actually also spoken about by people like Bernardo Kastrup. The guy's a genius, by the way.
Yeah, I really like his stuff. Yeah.
I mean, if I were ever to meet him, which I probably never will, we'd probably argue like cats and dogs, but we're probably about 0.2% different from each other. He seems to like to argue. Sorry, Bernardo, you seem to like to argue. Of course, I'm innocent as a driven snow, and I never like to argue. But there's this thing where he calls it. Different people call it different things. Some people call it mind at large. I think Huxley used that phrase. I like to use the phrase the larger life. I like to use that phrase instead. But really, it's mostly awareness. Now, here's the trick. Here's the trick of Platonic Surrealism, which can get you out of the clutches of despair for some people and teach you transcendence in just seconds, right? There's only one awareness. Just one. And that awareness is like a cosmic field beyond all space and time. Now, the nature of awareness is that it's not like a being. It's like a light. And if it were a being, it would hide that fact utterly. Because if these, let's call them divine principles, and I don't even like the word divine. You'll see why. I don't even like the word divine, but let's say divine principles. It's fair enough. If these divine principles like came down to earth and made themselves so obvious that no living person could possibly argue with it, right? That would be the worst catastrophe the human race has ever experienced, because it would strip all free will away from every living person. Instead of them all taking their own creative healing path, where they try to find the light within themselves and fan the flames, everybody would have to be identical. See, I'll just be brutal here about Christianity. I'm just going to say it. The fault of Christianity is they worship a false god. And every group of Christians worships a different cultural form of this false god. And if somebody worships a different form than your false god, then the religion seems to prompt you to want them to go to hell or something. I mean, there's all this intense doctrinal fighting, and Mormons aren't really Christians, they're going to hell. Catholics, they believe in saints. We know that, in the time of the apostles, that's when miracles stopped. And so they say that saints had it happen after that. So they're going to hell. They work for the devil. I will just stare anyone in the eye. Bring me the Pope. I will look into his eyes until he melts like a puddle. I will do this, okay? I'm talking to you, Mr. Pope. If you ever see this, you won't. You're in a silo. You can't see what's true. But
I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, please. I'd love to meet him. Seems like a pretty good guy overall. And the previous one was even better, I think. He was awesome. But when you say this image is God, and if you disagree, you're going to hell, that's the most toxic, evil thing you could possibly do as a human being, short of like hurting a baby or puppy. It's almost pretty much on that level, right? If you say, well, if you do this or this, that's like original sin, and you're automatically going to go to hell. Before you're born, you're cosmic garbage, and you need a soul transplant from this God that we have defined in our holy book, that we decided what goes in the Bible, It's the ones that promoted Rome and Constantine, the expansion of Rome and the expansion of that particular form of church. And then they went and killed all the Gnostics and the Platonists and all the people that were beautiful, transcendent people who wanted love and hope and happiness and peace for the world, and they killed them all. They killed all the natives, all the continents, right? All the pagans got killed. All the Gnostics, the Waldensians, there's like a dozen different kinds of Gnostics. Yeah, the Cathars. Oh boy, they had a shine on those Cathars. They all had to die. So you see, if you take, let's call it the divine light, and you say that only we own it, and you're screwed if you don't obey us, you have destroyed it. And Jesus would never have tolerated that shit. What did he do? He went to the temple and he kicked over the money changers' table, saying, you guys are corrupting how things are supposed to be. He didn't take any of that shit. He said, no, you guys are all wrong.
I have a sticker on my laptop right now that is a picture of Jesus looking very Jesus-y. And at the bottom it says, OMG, you guys, that's not what I said.
Well, right.
It's so true. And I want to say this to you, Kevin, because I do agree with you. I agree with you. I think that, for multitudinous reasons. But I was a Buddhist. I was a Tibetan Buddhist for a while, practicing like hardcore, living in a Tibetan Buddhist temple and doing all of that. Thought I was going to be monastic. Yes. It was one of the things that I did to try to find this feeling that I know you relate to of there's more. I know there's more. How come the majority of people can't see it, et cetera, right? So a lot of people in this community talk about having that experience growing up. But when I was a Tibetan Buddhist, I became and still am a major fan of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, because one of the things he said, he is for real, like in my opinion, one of the things he said was, I don't think Buddhism is the one and only way. He said, if you are somebody who needs religion, you need spiritual guidance in your life. I'm paraphrasing, but this is basically what he said. And Catholicism works for you, and it makes you a happier person and a kinder person and a more loving person. It makes you better to others. It makes you better to the planet. Then that's the one for you. Go with that. You know, if it's Judaism, go with that, if that's the effect it gives you. And I thought, wow, okay, finally, here's a religious leader that I can actually listen to. I also found out later on I'm just not a joiner. I can't go with, you know, one boat. I'm interested in all the things. I want to learn about all the things. I think they're all interconnected, and leading back to what you're saying right now, the root is essentially the same. So please keep going with what you were saying, Kevin. I'm very interested.
Okay. Well, I want to finish up with Christianity so I don't get mugged. And then we can go back to where those other topics that we came from. So I'm 100% cool with Jesus. There's no problem there. He was
Love
a rebel. Yeah. But here's the problem with Jesus, okay? He never documented his work. You can say he was God and created the universe, but he didn't document his work, and that is unforgivable. Okay? And he also said that he'd be coming back while those standing there were standing there, and that didn't happen. So he gave a false prophecy, and he didn't document his work. So I'll give him an A- for effort because he got himself crucified for believing in his message, and he affected a lot of lives, okay? I'm not taking that from him. But, you know, just Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you, right?
Yes.
And he said that before Christianity even existed. Because Paul invented Christianity more than anyone. Jesus didn't. Jesus was a Jew. He wasn't a Christian. Jesus was not the first Christian because Christianity wasn't invented till after 100 AD, 70 years after he died. And it wasn't even really made very solid till about, I don't know, 305 or 330 or something AD. Christianity didn't exist for almost 300 years after he died. Jesus was not a Christian. He was a goofball who put his heart and body and soul behind what he did, and he tried to make a difference. So I love him, man. I love Jesus, but don't give me this Christian crap. It's all bullshit. The whole lot of it is bullshit. Show me one Christian that sells everything he has and gives it to the poor. I'll wait. Just tell me one case in the history of the world, just once. Just tell me. Well, then I guess you're not Christians, or you are Christians, but you're not a follower of Jesus, that's for sure.
Yeah. The hermits are very few and far in between.
Right. So, yeah. That whole documentation thing, no, I'm really big on that. When I talk about my death experience, I'll mention documentation is the key reason I came back to the world, but we'll talk about that later. So let's wind our path back.
Yeah, so real quick, I wanted to ask you about the technique that you said you taught at Esalen.
Yes.
You mind sharing a bit about that?
Well, if you buy my book and spend $1.99, you can read all about it in the privacy of your home. That's Kindle price. Or it's on the website. You know what? I'll tell you what. The reason I put out a book is so that it would live forever in the vaults of Amazon. I make 70 cents if you buy that $1.99 book. 70 cents. And I've sold 11 copies. So I'm not going to be retiring on this book sales anytime soon, okay? But it just seemed like a very convenient...
grifting, man. Stop grifting.
Yeah. It's too honest. It's not going to sell.
99?
Yeah. So, but you can go to the website, platonicsurrealism.com, and it's all there for free. There's nothing in the book that you can't get on the website. Just the book, you know, it's cool. It's right there, and you can like search it and stuff. It's very cool. So Theurgy was originally mainly from a Greek philosopher named Iamblichus, though there were bits before him. And it was kind of a divine magic sort of thing, a wonder-working sort of thing based upon the Greek. And he said that there were facets of nature that you could focus on as part of the magic of Theurgy to contact the divine. Now, they were all big back then on the planets and astrology. See, you can tell who's a bullshitter who knows about spirituality and the occult and who is not a bullshitter. I mean, in terms of historical knowledge going back a long ways. I'm not saying everybody has to be a big history buff. But in ancient history, freaking everybody was an astrologer or watched the sky because they thought that's where God was. Because if you look up at the pole star, right, the North Star, it never goes below the horizon. So they go, that's the steadiest thing that we can see. Must be God. But there's other stars, like, Sirius, that goes below the horizon as part of its diurnal. So stars that go underneath the horizon at night, they are said to be going to the underworld, you see. So a star or a planet that goes under the horizon is considered to be like, Hades or Pluto or Hecate, something like that. And the ones that never do are like the big major gods of good. So it's very interesting that it's called the precession of the equinoxes, just how the Earth wiggles as it rotates, causes changes in the stars that people watch for thousands of years and turned it into deep occult mystical claptrap, which wasn't true, but they thought it was. So I'm not an expert on Greek theurgy because I'm not an occultist, but I know for a fact that they thought very highly of using the planets in rituals. So that's why they were so big on astrology. So the basic concept was that you could become close to the inner light of God and thus closer to these heavenly powers. That's what they thought. I mean, Plato kind of started everything in many ways, that there was the one, the Father, the greatest good, and then other people kind of fine-tuned it. Now, I want to talk about Plato just a little bit. This is important. So, Plato had an emanationist model, as it's called, where God, the good, the perfect form, beyond forms, the transcendent, is at the center, kind of like the sun, and then emits out all this like radiation. And actually, this is kind of like Ford's spectrum idea too, by the way. You can ask me about that later. According to Plato, the farther you got from, quote, God, the Father, or the monad means one, by the way, though I use it differently. The farther away you get, the more imperfect the expression of the one is. And so when you get all the way out to the outer edges of what's possible, it is seen as physical matter. Pure spirit emanates out until it becomes physical matter. Now, this is really not such a ridiculous concept as one might think, because matter is actually, in a manner of speaking, frozen light. I mean, we're quantum waveforms of basically electromagnetic radiation chasing each other's tails so that it looks like physical matter. So we are basically frozen light, and that's modern science. So we are, even physical matter is just an eruption of the deepest layer of all this stuff. And if you want to call that deepest layer God, you can. But in Platonic Surrealism, we don't use the word God, because once you define God, then you got to kill people who disagree with you and have wars and destroy whole nations. So we don't use the word God. So, yeah, Plato got taken way wrong, you see, because if you start going, well, the physical world is evil, then you wind up with Gnosticism and Christianity. Now, Christianity teaches that matter is innately evil. It's been stamped by the sin of Eve. Now, you'll notice that everything in the world that is wrong is the woman's fault in Christianity. Man will never take responsibility for anything. It's all the woman's fault. I find that wretched. So, anyway, So you started getting the development of dualism, of the cosmic good and the cosmic evil, spirit and matter. But they were never separate to begin with. People sold it that way. Because once you make something evil and then you say, well, you join our club and we'll protect you from that evil. Keep those dollars coming in the offering plate and we'll protect you from the devil, etc., 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 etc. Then you get all these distortions of what's really true and all these social power games that are played. So if you want to be truly spiritual, hey, I'll give you 2 fast hints here. Don't define what God is. Don't define what your soul is. Anything you define, you distort, and the light becomes distorted. Don't worry about defining your soul. Don't worry about defining God. Now, you got to have something to latch onto, and that's called awareness. Because who can argue that we're aware? I'm aware. Are you aware?
Yep.
And then how aware are we, kind of thing? You know, I mean, that's a question.
Well, that's actually irrelevant. But, well, I'm sorry. It's not irrelevant. I'm sorry. I don't mean to shut you down like that.
No. That's okay. Please be honest. I like that. I prefer that.
You see, I got to tell you my little red wagon story now. Then you'll understand why I said. So one of the first things that came to me when I started writing down Platonic Surrealism is a story that I got from somebody somewhere, maybe 20, 30 years ago in some book. And I've never been able to find who said the story so I can give credit to the person. It's forever lost in history. And oh, please, whoever you are, sir or ma'am, please don't hate me. I will give you credit till the end of time, but you got to step forward. I don't know where I got the story from. I didn't create the story. I read it somewhere. So here's the story. There was 2 kingdoms, and there was a border crossing between the 2 kingdoms, and they were at war with each other. So there were very suspicious and hostile border guards on either side of the checkpoint between the 2 countries. Kingdom A's guards here, Kingdom B's guards here, looking at each other and controlling who could cross between the 2 kingdoms at war. So one day a little boy comes along from one side, let's call it the right side, and he's hauling a little red wagon. This is the infamous Platonic Surrealism little red wagon story. And he's got some stuff in it, these little boxes, nothing amazing. And he comes up to the checkpoint. And the people in his country, they're fine. Oh, yeah, go on through. You know, you're a little boy, you're not going to hurt anything. Well, the enemy guards, they said, stop, halt, be inspected, be searched for contraband. They were all just rude and suspicious. So they tore through his little red wagon and the little boxes in it, and they about broke everything up and spent like half an hour being a real nuisance, and finally said, okay, nothing here, no contraband, you're not smuggling weapons or whatever, you can pass. So every day for 3 days, the little boy came through the checkpoint, and every day there was different stuff in the wagon. One day it was straw, one day it was dirt, one day it was farm implements. Every day there was something different. And every day the enemy guards got more and more frustrated because they'd search and search and search and they couldn't find anything. They were just determined he was a smuggler, you know, had to be up to no good. So on the 4th day, went through the same procedure, the little boy with his little red wagon. And he passed through the enemy checkpoint. He was kind of on a little hill, a little rise, where he could see them and they could see him. And he called out to the guards and he said, you know, you were right, guards. I've been smuggling something this entire time. And they got all excited. They jumped up and down. We knew it, you little asshole. We knew that you were smuggling something. What were you smuggling? You got to tell us. It's driving us crazy. And the little boy gives a big cheesy smile and goes, little red wagons.
My goodness, yeah. Yeah. What was obvious? Like, what was directly in front of them? They weren't paying attention to it.
Now, at this point, if I'm teaching a class on this, I tend to embarrass my students and make them a little uncomfortable. I'll ask, so in terms of Platonic Surrealism, what does this story teach you? And they'll say various things. No one's ever gotten it right, but I'll tell you the answer. It's very simple. The contents of the wagon are like consciousness. They're always changing, and they may not matter at all. But what matters is you are alive and you are aware. And you have the ability to do anything with your contents of the wagon. You are a creator. You are a transcendent being with the gift of awareness that exists beyond space and time. There's one awareness. We all share the same pool of awareness. And we're all creators as human beings. So the contents of the wagon, which are called consciousness, which all these people want to worship consciousness, right? It's consciousness, everything's freaking consciousness. Well, anyone that goes on about consciousness, they're doing the Brady Bunch thing. Marsha. You see, they don't have a clue about anything. If anyone even says the word consciousness without first talking about awareness and potentiality, they are clueless. Sorry, I just insulted everyone. Get over it.
I've got a question for you about awareness.
Please.
You ready?
Of course.
All right.
Dude, just let me have it. Just send me reeling back on my heels, amazed at your brilliance. I want to hear it.
It's not going to be that intense, but it's a topic that I personally find very interesting. And so one of the questions that Anthony and I always ask our guests is, what were you like when you were a child? And part of the reason for that is because first of all, I'm a longtime educator. I believe children are incredibly important, and paying attention to the experience of children, the awareness of children, what they have to say, how they think, how they imagine, how they dream. We're losing so much possibility when we don't listen to children. So I want to know, 2 thumbs up for that. Thank you. The second thing is, when we're children, we're so unfettered, like we're still able to connect. We have abilities, all that kind of stuff. I think that's a very important time of life, one that we often breeze past. And in terms of, the paranormal, the anomalous abilities, what powers or, special awarenesses children may have. But also because in your particular case, you said that you had awareness of being in the womb. So I want to, as part of your origin story, I want to ask you, what were you like when you were a child? But within that question, can you talk to us about how you experienced awareness when you were a child?
Absolutely.
I'm going to add a little on top of that. We know the importance or the relevance of trauma in these fields. And I understand, I've heard you talk about your childhood and some of the trauma you've experienced, and if that has affected the awareness at all and how that plays into this.
Perfect questions. So when I first remember being aware, there was like a vast pool of light, and I was a part of it, and there were no boundaries. That's my first memory. And what changed for me is I was in my mother's womb, and my father was trying to kill my mother by strangling her with the phone cord. And this was very disruptive to me because I liked being in the womb. I didn't honestly know any better, right? I mean, how could I? I mean, sure, there was a transcendent part of me, but that transcendent part gets all encapsulated, so to speak, and loses a lot of its ability to perceive when you're in a human body. It really does. So fortunately, my mother wasn't killed, or I wouldn't be here. And of course, I didn't want my mother to be killed anyway, though maybe later on I would wonder about that. She was the one that abused me. She beat me and beat me and beat me and beat me. Just crying, hysterically beating me. She started out with a broom, beat me with that until it broke over my backside. Then she beat me with her hairbrush. That was more painful. And she got so mad at me because she beat me so hard she broke her plastic hairbrush on me. And she said, "You lousy kid, you break everything."
I'm so sorry, Kevin.
It's nothing. So she did look at a bar of rebar and picked it up, and I thought she was going to beat me to death with rebar. That wouldn't have broken over me. That would have just killed me. She did not beat me with the rebar, but she threatened me with it. So my poor mother was a complete mess. I'm pretty convinced she was in the autistic spectrum, but didn't realize it because they hadn't really done high functioning autism at that point. I was born in the early 60s, so they didn't know anything about Hans Asperger. You know, it was originally Asperger's syndrome. He didn't come out with anything till the 80s, I think. So they didn't know. They go, well, okay, you can't be autistic because then you wouldn't be speaking. That's all they knew. It's called Canners or Connors, whatever, K-A-N-N-E-R-S, autism. And that's the nonverbal type pretty much. So they didn't know you could be, you know, a high functioning autistic as it's called nowadays. So they didn't know about it. But I think my mother was a kind of a high functioning autistic. They tortured my mother. She wouldn't follow social expectations. So they gave her repeated electroshock therapy, and they talked about giving her a lobotomy to calm her down. That was my mother. Most of my childhood, she was in a mental hospital. So, and when she came home, she beat me. So I didn't really want her to come home. And she was so miserable and so unhappy, she attempted suicide 3 times while I was growing up. The first time I was maybe 8 years old. I walked into the bathroom and there she was naked in the bathtub full of blood. She'd slit her wrists and was bleeding out. And she just said, "Shut the door. I don't want to live," she said. And so I was kind of confused. I didn't know what to make of this. As it turned out, my stepfather, because my father went to prison for attempted murder of my mother, you know, my stepfather came around and he got her to the hospital and they saved her. Well, about a year later, same thing. Found her in a tub full of blood up to the brim with blood bleeding out of her. Same thing. And she was saved again. She apparently never figured out that you cut this way, not this way. You know, not that I'm endorsing any self-harm in any way. Trust me, I'm not. And the third time, I even know the exact day that she attempted suicide. I'd have to look it up, but it was the day that Elvis Presley died. See, she was in love with Elvis Presley. And the day that Elvis Presley died, she said the king is dead, and she ate a bottle of sleeping pills and tried to commit suicide. She just kept weeping and saying, "The king is dead, the king is dead." Just, she was always playing his music, and he was all she lived for years. So yeah. And I lived out in the country in an abandoned building. When I was really little, all we had was an outhouse. We didn't have heating or air, wood stoves only. We went out and cleaned farmers' groves and chopped down the wood so that we wouldn't freeze to death in Minnesota in the winter, where it gets 100 below zero wind chill sometimes. And we didn't have screens on the windows, so in the summer when it was 100 degrees, the mosquitoes would just come in and eat us alive. Excuse me. And this was about a quarter mile out in the countryside. So I was just, and my stepfather hated me more than anything in the universe. He didn't beat me. That was my mother's job. But he hated me. I could just feel this glow of pure hatred coming off him my whole life. So yeah, I had a really hard childhood. But now that I can answer your question about awareness, okay? So when I was in the womb, I had all this awareness. And up until about the age of 5, I had this awareness. It was like magical. It was just, I assumed everybody had it, right? Because you don't know as a kid what's inside other people's heads. You just don't know. Well, actually, I knew what was in my mother's head because we had that telepathy tape sort of thing going on between her and I. So I kind of assumed everybody was telepathic, but they were just assholes. I mean, if they could hear me and I could hear them, why would they lie? Because I would know they're lying because I know what they're thinking. But that was just a phase. I got my first swat in the mouth when I was 5. And the moment that happened, there was like this halo of golden light around me. And when I got swatted, I really hurt bad. I couldn't take anymore. And it shrunk and it went away. And it was mostly gone for a lot of my childhood. Because the suffering I cocooned myself away. I rolled myself up in a ball. That's what people tend to do, by the way. They roll themselves up into a ball and then they can't sense anything. Because life is rough for everybody, you know?
Yeah.
Now, later on, I kept wondering, well, where did the light go? Where did the light go? And as I was searching for the light, I wanted to come back. As a child, I had all these experiences with these like shadow beings, and they looked like Egyptian god figures, but they're kind of shadow beings, but they were faintly glowing. And they all seemed to want to feed on me, so I let them. I let them feed on me. You see, I was in Minnesota and I was forced to go to Sunday school. So it was like, oh, I'll be like Jesus. He fed everybody. He made the bread multiply. I'll just feed these guys. They just need love and then they'll be okay. So I fed these spiritual creatures my whole childhood. And I got a huge collection of them around me. And I remember one time it was kind of interesting. I was like 17 and I called up one of those telephone psychics, you know. And she must have been the real deal because she screamed and she said, "You are surrounded by evil for miles and miles around you. I won't talk to you." And she hung up on me and didn't charge me any money.
Wow.
So, yeah, she felt these guys.
Kevin, can I ask you when you say they were like Egyptian gods, what do you mean by that? And when you say they fed on you, do you mind specifying what that meant?
Sure, absolutely. Well, you can tell the difference between a bullshitter and someone who may have actually encountered something unusual by if they provide details like I'm trying to provide you now. When I was little, I saw a National Geographic that had Egyptian Theurgy, in other words, animal-headed human pictures of the Egyptian gods from like the tombstone pictures, etc. I mean, tomb pictures, you know, in Egypt. And that really caught my imagination. So I think my mind was filling in that, well, these were like those magical Egyptian god things. And so I saw them that way because that's the only reference I had. They weren't Egyptian god things, I don't think. But that's how I perceived them because it excited my imagination when I saw that National Geographic cover about that. That's how you tell the difference between that's how you tell the difference between a bullshitter and someone who's actually experienced something, because a straight person will admit details like this, which doesn't make me sound all super mystical, right? So to repeat, I saw these entities as, you know, like the ibis-headed god, etc., the crocodile-headed god. I didn't know how to perceive these beings very well, so I used that kind of, are these the Egyptian gods visiting me? You know, because I saw a picture of them. I mean, come on, I was like 6 years old when I first noticed it.
Well, so if I can get you I'm asking this because some of my own experiences and the specifics I think are important to me, at least. When you say it's how you perceive them, does that mean that it's just subjectively happening in terms of the visual or whatever sensory experience you're having? In your experience, do you think that the way you were consciously trying to perceive them changed how they were maybe intersubjectively manifesting?
Yeah, no, that's interesting, and we can go over that in great detail, actually. Platonic Surrealism is all about this sort of very little distinction. Questions people have for a lifetime are just covered, oh yeah, yawn, all throughout Platonic Surrealism. So there was two kinds of senses I had of them. There was the kind of visual image that my conscious rational mind, my left brain hemisphere, was using because it didn't have any other way to see them. But my right brain hemisphere, though I didn't even know about brain hemispheres at the time, well, I kind of did actually. Now that's another weird story, but I could feel them, but I couldn't see them. So it's like I could feel their nature, which was a different sensory input channel than my poor rational brain has to show me something. Those are two different streams. And, in Platonic Surrealism, there's a 5 interface system model that we use. That means there's like 5 different brains or modalities of sensing that you can use to sense anything. So the conscious rational mind is just 20% of what we're capable of sensing with. But humans tend to make it 100% because they're not aware of the other 80%. A lot of people. Some people are.
Do you mind explaining what you meant by feeding on you again?
Okay.
Yeah. And what that felt like.
So I've always been aware of a tingly source of energy inside of me. I taught it at Esalen, by the way. Some people can feel it, some people can't. So all human beings are symbiotic with sentient plasma. That's what Platonic Surrealism says. And any mystical person I've ever known that was strongly mystical, they can see it, they can feel it. There's a stream between your fingers. And so if you go like this, and just pass your fingers like this, sensitive people will feel like there's a beam of energy coming out of their fingers. And you can practice it. You can tell what's wood. You can tell what's metal. You can see inside of objects with it when you practice it. But it's part of your being. Everybody's got it, but only mystical people can sense it. If you get good at it, you can even touch someone's face across the room with it and they'll feel it. When I was a kid, I was very aware of it. It was stronger than it is in me now. But I could send out little probes and I could tell, which box has the marble in it, the steel marble or the glass marble. It's a field. It's like a field of physics. It's a real thing. And so you could tell, like iron/titanium would block energy, right? More than like plastic. So yeah, I see it, I feel it, and I've always seen it. I've always felt it. Long before I ever read my first metaphysical book. So I didn't have magical thinking in terms of I read some Dogma cult book and so I go, oh yeah, I can do that too. No, it's always been a part of me. So I could feel that they were trying to feed on that. It's what Monroe would probably call louche.
Wow.
So they were feeding on my waste energy, so to speak. But I had plenty to spare. I didn't mind. I wanted to reform them, you see. I had a mistaken idea about good and evil and all this, and it doesn't really work that way. At a certain point, I go, hey, maybe I shouldn't be feeding these guys. And so I cut them off. I said, no. Well, they got angry. I could feel their rage building up. They were angry. They wanted to be fed. They were like bears. It's like I was feeding bears in the park, and then I stopped feeding them. They didn't like it. So came a...
What did it feel like when they fed on you?
I just felt a little depleted. Just a little bit, though. I always had a big supply.
So you didn't feel... Did you feel at risk? Or
no?
Did you feel like you were being violated in
no.
some way?
No. They were feeding on what I was emitting into the environment around me.
And did you feel like you were giving them a form of consent consciously?
I was. I was giving consent until the point came where I wondered if I wanted to keep giving consent. And then that's when they got angry when I stopped the consent. So they were not invading inside my body. They weren't possessing me. They weren't controlling me. They weren't influencing me. And why would I let that happen? Though I was possessed once in my life, and that's a very disturbing incident. Yeah, maybe someday I'll talk to you about that. It was very educational, though. Very distressing. I was possessed for 3 days. Couldn't control my limbs. Well, I could just control my limbs. It was very stressful. But anyway, these spiritual creatures, I was giving consent until the point came where I wondered if I wanted to keep giving consent. And then that's when they got angry when I stopped the consent. So Platonic Surrealism has a big section how we're actually symbiotic creatures. Well, Jeff Kripal always says the humans too, right? Well, he knows better than he knows. Well, he knows now. He's my student, He says it all over.
That's great.
Yeah. He's a wonderful man that he can be that humble. But he's a great man. He's a truly great man in every way I can think of. And he's humble enough to admit that he's a student of a pretty banged up autistic Minnesota farm boy with no
That's amazing.
education. I have no education.
You have plenty of education, just not standard.
Yes, yes, yes. And Kevin, sorry, go on. You were going to say something else. I've got another question for you, but please continue.
Okay, well, I just want to wrap up the feeding thing.
Yeah.
So the more I cut him off, basically, okay, this will be a good example. There's people that when you just get in the same room with them, they're so loving. It's like you can feel their love, right? And they give it to almost anyone. You know what I mean. Anthony, you've got some of it.
Thank you.
Well, you do.
Yeah, I feel it. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, that's the loosh. That's the bioplasma. And humans like are generators for it. And it's just a part of our life cycle. I truly believe that without being symbiotic with plasma, bioplasma, and I know scientists will go, oh, no. And I'll say, well, but there's those weak biophotons from the studies. And they'll go, well, yeah, but it's not enough, this and that. And okay. I don't claim to understand our symbiotic nature with bioplasma to a point where I can teach physicists about it, though I'm writing a book on physics. So I'm sympathetic that the proof isn't there yet. But people know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of people, when I was at Esalen, they go, oh, shit, I've never done that before. You're right. I see it. I feel it. Or just feeling that love emanate from people. You can sense it. Some people really radiate. A lot of people don't, but some people really radiate. So the really wonderful people are radiating all the time. I knew a guy that radiated so powerfully, I could feel him across the country. He was that powerful. But a lot of people, they're selfish. They keep it to themselves. They go, well, this feeling of being alive, this love, I'll just keep it all for myself. I'll keep it bottled up inside of me. Well, these are the people that aren't psychic. It's just that simple. Right? You've heard the phrase about porosity, that like abuse opens you up. The Kenneth Ring studies about how abuse makes you psychic and all that sort of thing. And he talks a lot. A lot of people have studied. You really should look at the research. All the big ufology, all the gateway process people are very familiar with it. So, yeah, loving makes you porous because you're not blocking yourself off from everyone. You're being loving. So, it's the natural, healthy state of human beings to be loving and to give off love, right? And if another part of life benefits from it, so what's so bad about that? So there's this evil thing, this very, very evil thing where people talk about, oh, there's all these parasites and they just want to tunnel into us and steal our loosh. Well, if you want it to be that way, you can have it be that way. Now, why anyone would want to do that, I can't imagine. It's not necessary. And then there's people that...
It's not necessary. You mean that it's not necessary for the parasites to do this, the quote-unquote parasites, or for you to
let them in? Yeah, it's not necessary. Now, some people, if they're just like beaten and molested and all this horrible stuff, they can get ripped open and stuff can come in. That can happen. And we live in a horrible world that can be true. But in the general case, the average person doesn't have anything to worry about. They really don't. They really don't.
And in your case, you said these were not parasitic entities. You were consenting.
I was consenting. And they never entered my body. I was generating this stuff anyway. I mean, What did I have to do with it? Well, I wasn't using it for anything. It's like, you know, God makes the rain fall on the redeemed and the sinners both, right? I hate the word God because it's so toxic, but some of those stories are kind of cool. You can learn from even corrupted stories sometimes. So yeah, no, it's human beings' place to be in a symbiosis with this life field, let's call it. We modulate it. Really all it is when awareness enters a human body, it ricochets around the atomic structure of the body, causing secondary oscillations and excitations that become this loosh. That's a part of it. And then there's the 99.99% of the universe that's just plasma. You can read Robert Temple's book, A New Vision of Heaven. Now there's physical plasma, and then there's this, let's call it metaphysical plasma. Well, I say it's kind of on a spectrum. Just like the emanationist model, of Plato I was talking about. So there's plasma. A scientist will generally go, okay, you guys don't know what you're talking about with your pseudoscience talk. Well, bullshit, I was a nuclear engineer. Sucker. I know exactly what I'm talking about. So you can have traditional hot plasma, which is generally like a gas with ions and dust particles. That's stereotypical plasma, like you might see in the sky, orbs or whatever, thought to be plasma. Or there's those freakish lightning balls. I forget what they're called now. And no one argues then. What's that? Ball lightning. Yeah, there's that kind of stuff. So nobody argues the hot plasma. But once you start talking about cold plasma, then people go all wiggy on you. They don't want to think about it. But really, any fluid, now a fluid is either a gas or a liquid. Any fluid can be plasma because all it needs is a fluid and electrically charged ions. That's all you need for it to be plasma, and that can be at room temperature. And scientists would argue. Well, fine. Argue. And then I'd bring out the analogy, well, our synapses and our nerves, they have sodium and potassium charges that cross against them. And it's liquid. Wait a minute, it's liquid and it has ions and it's part of what lets us think. Plasma? They go, oh, okay, if you want to mangle it into that. So, I'm not talking just garbage here, This is very close to being scientifically provable. But I will say, yes, there seems to be a more subtle version of it too. And I think we should be able to detect that with science at some point.
Sorry, did you have a question before I ask Kevin something else?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you a couple of things, Kevin, because I'm still curious about what your experience, because this to me is very important, right? The beginning of your life, like the roots of this lifetime anyway, and a lot of your experiences in it. So here you are having, like my heart really goes out to you. I know you're saying now you've reconciled with it and that's wonderful, but it sounds like such a really brutal childhood. So I am sorry that you went through that, because I'm sorry that any human goes through things like that. It just seems to be a part of being human, which is, it sucks, to put it very, very bluntly and very unsophisticatedly, but it does. So in any case, you're experiencing a great deal of hardship. You're experiencing what sounds like poverty and neglect and abuse. So at the same time, you remember having awareness in the womb, which is not common. And then you remember starting to have these experiences with these beings showing up and feeding on you. So what I want to go back to, like, as kind of the root of who you are and how this helps me understand more how you are where you are now, right? Like, where did all this start for you? What was your awareness like when you were a kid? Were you seeing beings around you? Were you having conversations with beings that were around you? What were you feeling and sensing? What was happening for you? Were you even able to do that in the midst of all this horrible abuse? Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah. So during my abused childhood phase, which was, I haven't seen my parents in 44 years. We went no contact 44 years ago, and that's the best thing that ever happened to me, but they were awful. So, but during my childhood phase when I knew them, I had all manner of strange experiences, but they all seemed close to being negative. They weren't love and light because I didn't experience love and light because there was no love and light in my life. You see, your life can drag down your inner truth too. I mean, if you're being tortured, I mean, maybe that Jesus guy could have been overflowing with love while being tortured, but I wasn't 100% up to the task. Sorry. No, I had a lot of love, you know. For example, I was the fat kid, and I was just beaten silly in high school. And the teachers would never stop it. They would just watch me be beaten. Can I share something extremely disturbing with you, just so you know that what happened to me at home was just almost nothing compared to other things? Or is that too much and you want to skip by it? I'll leave it up to you. How much do you want to dip into the trauma?
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay.
We are.
So it got so bad at high school because I was the smartest kid in school and I was autistic and I had a weird affect, right? I mean, I walked funny, I talked funny because I was autistic. And, human tribalism.
Oh, sorry, Kevin. All right, sorry. We lost Sinead. She's dealing with some connection issues. So we're going to just wrap up some final thoughts here and we'll continue the rest in part 2. So please, Kevin, continue from what you're about to say.
Okay. I'm going to wrap this up fairly quickly. And most anyone's going to be absolutely shocked that I'll even share this because this is beyond trauma. But I want people to understand I experienced almost unlimited trauma, but it didn't conquer me or destroy me. That's kind of the message of hope I want. So I was a fat kid in high school. I was constantly beat up. I got the best grades in my class of 100. It was just effortless. Everything intellectual was just effortless to me. My nickname was Mad Scientist. I loved science. But there was this head bully in high school, and he just had my number. He had to destroy my books. He had to knock me over. He had to give me a bloody nose. He was one of these guys, right? And at the time, I didn't believe in fighting back. Because in Sunday school, you see, I was forced into Sunday school, and I wondered, what the hell am I doing in Sunday school? This is all bullshit. But I liked the concept of nonviolence, so I wouldn't fight back. And when I was getting beaten up, I'd go, when you're older, you're going to regret this. And they'd beat me, and they go, well, I'm enjoying it now, they'd say, and they'd beat me all the harder. And they beat me up on the way to school. They beat me up on the way home. They beat me up in front of teachers who did nothing. And then one day, and I can hardly believe I'm going to share this, but I want you to understand what it's like to be abused. So one day I was in the little boys' room in middle school, and the head bully came in, and I was peeing at the time in a urinal, and he said, "You are just so stupid." And then he grabbed my, squeezed it shut and said, "You are so stupid. Look at you. You're trying to pee, but you're too dumb. You can't even manage that." Well, that's bad enough. But while inserting his fingernails into my you-know-what, he pulled me away from the urinal by my you-know-what, and he paraded me around the entire school grounds in front of my entire graduating class and all the teachers.
Oh my God.
And he made a whole circle so that everyone saw it. And I was in so much pain, I couldn't respond. I was just in agony. My eyes were like bulged out. This pain just had me like comatose. I couldn't respond. And he dragged me around the full circle of the schoolyard. Teachers were watching. Everybody was clapping and cheering. Not the teachers, but all the kids were, not all the kids, but a lot of kids were clapping and cheering. And teachers did nothing. And
That's so horrible.
I can't tell you. So the secondary bully, the head bully always has a sidekick, like big dog, little dog,
Mm.
So the secondary bully always felt sorry for me, and he always tried to break it up. He'd say, well, you got him good. You got him enough. Yeah, you don't want to get him any worse than that. You get in trouble. And he'd always try to break it up. So he did that this time too, and he broke it up. So I was just left in the dirt, bleeding profusely from that region of my body. And no one came over to see if I was okay. I just went to the bathroom, tried to clean up. I was bleeding all over. The next day, yeah, it's what it is. It's fine.
No one should have to go through that.
You're right. No one should. So the next day I was called into the principal's office, and they said that I was a troublemaker disturbing the class, and they were considering kicking me out of high school.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What a horrible school.
I know. Because they even said, you must have had it coming.
What?
Yeah.
The adults said that?
The adults.
Oh my God.
And it wasn't just one, there was 3 of them in the room. So I, at that time, as a result of this, I decided that human beings as a whole were pretty messed up. And I decided that I wanted to be an example to fight against this sort of thing and human cruelty, and that I would devote the rest of my life to seeing if I could figure out why humans were this way and if anything could be done about it, and to try to be a better person than that no matter what happened to me. So it made me stronger. It made me stronger. So yeah, what happened at home?
Not many people would come out of that with that perspective and that mission. So that's something deeply admirable.
I imagine you're right.
It's heroic, man. Like, good on you, for real.
So anyway, yeah, I've known trauma. How do you live your life not trusting one living being? Because it feels like there's not one good person in the world if all 100 plus people in your class are cheering and not breaking it up. I mean, what is wrong with people? I mean, that's like an indictment of the whole human race. It seems. I mean, I didn't know about, there's billions of people elsewhere. There's all these kind people, loving people that would have just rushed in and broke it up without even thinking all over the world, but not in rural Minnesota, not at that time. There weren't any.
Yeah.
So I didn't let it ruin me for all people, but it made me really dive into human nature, how it works, why people act the way they act. What if anything can be done about it? And the nature of reality made me want to understand the nature of reality more than ever, because how can reality be so fucked up that this is what happens? And I got all my answers. I got every last answer. Every last answer about every last thing for my own personal satisfaction. And then I share some of that as Platonic Surrealism. So anyway.
And how old were you again at this point when you made that decision?
That what?
That this was going to be your mission?
I was 12.
Wow. That is one impressive 12-year-old.
If you say so. So just to put a bow on this for this part 1 here. So I won't go over all this other stuff where I almost starved to death. I was down to 150 pounds. And it was hard starving to death. It was hard. I don't have that problem anymore, as you can see. Once you starve an animal, they'll overeat the rest of their lives. Yeah. I'm also an animal, we're all animals too. We're just not only animals. Anyway, there came a time where my parents said, if we ever see you again, we're going to kill you. We don't even want you in the state of Minnesota anymore. And so they drugged me down to the Navy recruiter in town and said, okay, he's joining the Navy. And I said, well, why the Navy? And my stepfather said, well, in the Navy, you're going to be on either the East Coast or the West Coast where the ships are. So you'll be, 2,000 miles away from us. So we'll never have to see you again. And then I went into the Navy recruiter, and my choice was either I joined the Navy or my stepdad said he was going to kill me with my 12th grade, my gun safety rifle that when you're in Minnesota in the country, every kid goes to gun safety. Come on. He was going to kill me with my own gun. I never liked that gun really, but anyway, so I figured, well, going to the Navy has got to be better than this. So they gave me this intelligence test. It's called the ASVAB, and it's in the military intelligence test. And I scored really high, and they needed nuclear engineers. They needed people they could train to be nuclear engineers. And I had all the scores. So that's how I became a nuclear engineer and how I joined the Navy. I was drugged there at threat of death. And I spent 8 years in the Navy. And it was both horrible and interesting. And it did a lot for me. But it was also horrible because I didn't know I was autistic yet. And I had a lot of problems in the Navy. I mean, I got up to the point of engine room supervisor and was put in charge of 80 men. And, I was put in a war zone with Iran once even, very responsible position. I was fully trained on all of the nuclear reactor stuff, all systems I could draw from memory. All the technologies, mechanical, electrical, electronic, quantum chemistry, radiological, the whole thing. So I learned a lot in the Navy. And then that helped me make my way in life once I left the Navy. They'd go, well, you were a nuclear engineer. You should be able to do like computer stuff, right? And I go, oh, yeah, I can do that. So it gave me my start in life. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm going to end it there. But you asked about trauma, and I just want you to know I understand about trauma.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to destroy you necessarily, but exactly. I know it does destroy some people.
Thank you so much for opening up and sharing that with the world. I mean, I can't imagine just going through it, let alone talking about it. So I really deeply appreciate that. And
I hope that wasn't inappropriate. I shared such a sensitive story, but I just wanted people to understand the absolute depths of the suffering I experienced and how it didn't ruin me.
Yeah. Do you think that had you let it bring you down and had you not taken the path you did, I mean, do you view that as formative for how you relate with the world in the way that you do now? I mean, it's beyond like the path you took towards Platonic Surrealism, but just in terms of experience and awareness, going back to that, how would that change for someone who maybe would continue to experience trauma or continue to, not to say that you haven't since then, but who would kind of wallow in that? How do you think that would change their relationality with the world?
Yeah, and this is a great final thing to cover here. So I knew that I was transcendent awareness from beyond space and time. I knew it always. So no matter how hard the world was, I was still me. I always knew it. So nothing could destroy me. I could be killed and I would just laugh. I would cry from the pain, but no. And I'm not being fake tough guy either. I knew I was transcendent awareness. I always knew that. So if you've got that on your side, you can be a powerful individual. And if you don't, you might just be a victim. So that's why I want people to read my little book on Platonic Surrealism, because it teaches you how you can become, how you can remember that you're transcendent awareness and become so much stronger. It's just simple.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. Sorry about some of the technical difficulties.
No problem.
Sorry this got very, very deep, but I think this is all really important
Right. Thank you, and hopefully we can do a part 2 of like 2 hours, because there's no lack of content to discuss.
I really want to, because I mean, I want to get into. I mean, I've heard you talk about cosmic mitochondria. I've heard you talk about the Fae. Talk about mushrooms and plant.
Oh hell, we could have like 5 different 2-hour sessions if you want. Make like one of those folders and just stick me in it. Here's the Kevin series where we talk to Kev.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you to the audience for sticking with us. I know this was a tough conversation, and thank you for sticking through it. And please share this with anyone you think would find this helpful in their life and educational, because there is a lot to learn here, and it's gonna keep going. We got a lot more to cover. So thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. You're welcome.